Welcome to the Worth Listening podcast, where we focus on having positive and productive conversations around money. I'm your host, Lauren, a 4-time Olympian and certified financial planner. On this show, my guests share their money stories. Everyone has a unique story and experiences both wins and losses when it comes to money. My intent is to give listeners something they can relate to, something that builds their courage to be open and take control of their own money story. When I'm not creating a great show for my listeners, I'm running my company, Worth Winning, where I help individuals and families organize their finances. Check us out at worth-winning.com. All right, now on with the show. Hey, everybody. So in the month of June, we're going to be talking men and money on the podcast. We frequently hear information about women and how they feel about money, how they react to money, etc. Or we hear about money in the broad sense overall. But I wanted to make sure that we shine a light on how men feel and think about money too. So today I'm excited to have Erik Kroll, who is a very good friend and a colleague of mine, here to share his money memoir with us. Erik is a certified financial planner and the owner of Hilltop Financial Advisors in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. He has a passion for helping people overcome student loan debt and find peace of mind with their money in general. I came to know Erik when we partnered up to do some financial planning work together, and I am so glad to have met him. Today, Erik will share with us how he got his start in financial planning and what challenges he faced as he set out to start his own business. We're also going to discuss some of the common stereotypes that surround genders and finance. Let's listen to Erik share his money memoir. Erik, it has been a long time coming. I am so glad that I have finally coerced you to being on the show.
I'm glad to be on the show, Lauren. Thank you for having me.
Yes. All right. Well, let's get this party started by introducing you to the world. So why don't you start by just telling us a little bit about where you're from, what kind of upbringing you had, and, kind of what your household was like as it pertains to things that you think about money. So did you have siblings? What kind of work did your parents do? Just kind of fill us in on who you are.
Yeah, so I live in Wisconsin now, but I grew up in Alaska, and growing up in Alaska, the main sport is hockey. I grew up playing hockey. So I have one brother. It's me, my brother, my mom and dad. My brother and I both played hockey pretty competitively growing up. And so they would cart us back and forth to practices and games. So we would be playing hockey a good 4 or 5 days a week at least growing up, on top of having school responsibilities.
Is hockey an expensive sport?
Oh God, yeah. This kind of goes into our conversation of how things go with money. I never really knew how much it cost. I didn't really ask growing up. I just knew it cost a lot because my parents would always complain about the ice bill or the coach's fees or whatever. Not necessarily complain, but I'd be like, man, these things are not cheap. And so they would impress upon me that those things were not cheap, not like it was every day or anything, but I could tell it was not cheap to play hockey, but they had no problem paying for it. They had no problem paying for me to play hockey because that was something I was very passionate about, both me and my brother. So they were very, very supportive parents, and I owe them a lot. So it's not just the ice fees that are expensive, but playing in Alaska, if you are on any sort of competitive team, there's a fair amount of travel involved, and any travel to and from Alaska gets pretty expensive pretty quickly.
Oh, yeah. I hadn't even thought of that because you're not mainland. So it's not like you're just hopping on a plane somewhere left or right. It's like you got to come into the States and then, so it's a pretty long flight in general, unless you're staying pretty snug and tug on the West Coast, huh?
Yeah. So we grew up in playing hockey in Anchorage. And so the next place that we would ever go play would be Vancouver, British Columbia. And so you either fly to Seattle, and that's a 3.5 hour or so flight, and then you got to drive, or you fly straight to Vancouver, and that's, same thing. And usually we're not playing teams in Seattle or anything. It's elsewhere. So Canada, various places. I actually got to see a lot of the country playing hockey, which was another cool privilege that I was able to get growing up.
Yeah, I would say that would probably be pretty cool. But like you said, Alaska's that state. It belongs to us, but you got to go through another country to get back to the rest of us.
Yeah.
What kind of work did your parents do?
So my parents are now both retired, but my dad was a electronics technician, worked for AT&T, making sure that your cell phone gets service so you can make calls basically. And my mom worked for the state of Alaska, helping people get claims on their Social Security for disability.
Cool. I know that there is a lot that goes into figuring that out for people. So the people behind the scenes, it's always cool to hear about stuff like that.
Yeah, my mom would have to interface with doctors and the people trying to get claims and all sorts of different people. So it's a pretty interesting job.
So tell us a little bit more about childhood. Do you have like a first memory of money or one outstanding thing?
Yeah, my parents never made me work growing up. That's not lost on me how lucky I was or nice that was or how easy I might have had it growing up. But really, they viewed my job as putting my time and efforts into school and putting my time and efforts into hockey because it was a goal of mine. It was a goal of my brothers to try and go pro. And trying to do that is very competitive. And so that could be its own full time job sometimes. So they never made me get a job. So my first memory of money, probably, gosh, I don't really have too many growing up.
When did you get your first job? Like what age were you then?
It's like my senior year of high school. I worked at a gym. So I was able to work out and man the front desk. It was really good for what I had.
Yeah, pretty sweet deal.
Yeah. I don't think my first real experience with money probably came during college in an internship. I got an internship for a financial planner, and she dealt with people's money in a very comprehensive way, more than just investments or anything like that. And so I think that would probably be my biggest memory of money. And I don't know, that probably hit fairly late in life compared to a lot of people. We had a little bit of conversations around money in the family, but not a ton.
Yeah, I find that that's pretty frequent that people don't spend a lot of time in the household talking about finances. And so the memory of money comes in, all sorts of different ways. So what about like college? So you said you remember an internship, but what about a conversation around money as it pertains to how you were going to pay for college and what did that look like?
So there's an exit counseling session you have to do when you graduate college, but there's also an entry counseling session, I believe, where they tell you about the different types of loans that you're going to take out. And I was with my mom when she was helping us fill out the FAFSA form. So that's the most that I got. Like I knew I had to take out loans and I'd have to pay them back. Goal was to get as much scholarships as I could. I did get some money from the school, but not all.
That's interesting because a lot of people don't really understand what a loan is at 17 or 18 years old. And it's interesting that you say, like, I knew it was loans and I knew that, I needed to try to get as much scholarship as possible to make sure I wasn't going to have to get the loans, which was the part that I had to pay back. So Erik is also a student loan expert, everyone. We deal quite a bit with people that end up with six-figure student loan debt. And frequently I hear that they didn't really understand what it was that they were signing up for. So
yeah, I get that a lot. And is your 18-year-old self going to be able to tell you all that you need to know in life? And would you trust that 18-year-old person? I just don't think someone who hasn't owned a house or had a job yet is really going to even be able to fathom what that's like taking out student loans anyway.
Yeah, there's definitely something to just having life experience and life experience being a teacher in and of itself, right?
Yes, absolutely.
In college, what were you thinking about money? Were you having to make a budget? Because that's the first time that people are kind of off on their own. They're adults, but you don't have like full adult responsibilities. So do you have any memories of having to figure out, how we're going to eat from one month to the next or anything like that? Or having conversations with your college buddies about money?
A little bit more so. The money I was concerned about was, can I go out and have a good time, and really just trying to not spend a ton, really. I never took out credit cards in college or anything like that. We had paid up front for the meal plan at school. So I had to budget my meals essentially and not go overboard there. But I didn't have to do too much budgeting while I was in college, just here and there.
So then what happened after college? First job, what was that like?
I'd done an internship with a financial planner back in Alaska. I said, this is what I want to do for my career. Want to be a financial planner. Loved it. And I couldn't find a job right out of college. So I got a job bussing tables at a restaurant. That was actually a pretty good learning experience for me, having to live on my own. And in the restaurant industry, if you're a waiter or a busser, your earnings aren't level. They come in waves, and one week is different from the next. So it was an exercise in having to make sure I kept some aside just in case next week I didn't get paid as much or something like that, or I didn't get the hours that I was expecting.
Gotcha. So budgeting was absolutely necessary because of the fluctuating nature of your income.
Yeah, and making sure I set aside some money every paycheck so that if something did come up, I would be covered.
All right. So let's fast forward to today. What do you do now? How are you earning money?
I run, manage, own my own RIA. It's a financial planning firm in Wisconsin, and I help clients make smart decisions with their money.
It's a lovely job to have. Everybody needs to make smart decisions with their money.
It is, as you well know, Lauren, as well.
Easier said than done sometimes, but when you enlist the help of someone, it can make it a lot easier to keep you on the right track.
There's a lot of reasons why you would want to work with a financial planner. Not trying to give a shameless plug there, but the benefits are definitely there. That's for sure.
Yeah, so our theme this month is men and money. And that's why I am so excited to have you on, because not only are you a man who has to deal with money like everybody else, but you also run a financial practice. So I'm sure you've had all kinds of interactions with all kinds of people and have some really good perspectives on things like this. So I'll start by just kind of asking, how do you manage your finances? Are there anything that stick out about the way that you go about managing your personal finances? And is there any kind of inclination that you think is specific to being a male, or any pressures that you feel as a male as you figure out, this is my game plan for my personal finances?
Yeah. So, how I manage my finances, I wasn't doing the best of jobs early on, but I've started tracking our expenses a little bit more. It's become a lot more necessary now that we have a kid in the picture. And in the family, I'm the one that I do the budget, I track the expenses. When we were first married, I went in transaction by transaction and even split out transactions. Oh, this goes to this category, this goes to that category. I was probably too in the weeds on it. Now it's I back off a little bit, but I just remember when we were first married, I would look at expenses, say, Andrea, she's my wife. Andrea, what is this expense for? Help me categorize this. And she'd tell me blah, blah, blah. Okay. And then I'd see some transactions. And I think plenty of men, if they're doing the budgeting or tracking the expenses, they might be able to relate to this. They'll see an expense. So at least for me, I remember seeing some transactions from like Boston Store or something. Okay, Andrea, what is you spent like however much on at this store? And she's like, well, it was on clearance. I just remember thinking to myself, oh man, but you spent 50, $60 on this or whatever. But that was her thing. That was what she wanted to spend money on. Well, I guess really it comes down to there's usually one person, if they keep a budget, there's usually one person that does it. And they're the one that views the transactions. And then they'll look at the other spouse and be like, well, why did you spend money here? And men and women tend to have sometimes different spending patterns. Men will spend money on different things. Women will spend money on different things. Not every time, because I've worked with enough couples that you just can't overgeneralize, but tendencies, or stereotypically anyway, it creates some differences and some butting of heads. Not too much, but it can.
Do you feel any pressure as a man with any of like societal views that you've tried to succumb to or that you have succumbed to Is there something particular that is, feels particularly stressful? You feel like because this is the man's role or something like that you deal with?
The main one that our culture pushes or at least used to push to me is that the man is usually the breadwinner of the house. Is that the main one that you're thinking of too, Lauren?
I don't know what all the different things are out there. I know that that's definitely one of them is the man as the breadwinner. There's all sorts of things that people are told over the course of their lifetime that, the man needs to open the door for the lady and these sorts of things. And
Yeah.
like you said, a man is supposed to provide for the family, et cetera. Yeah, it could be one of the things that people feel most societal pressure around. I know that you as a business owner had to stop and leave a job that was giving you a paycheck every 2 weeks in order to start something. And I wonder if, maybe felt pressure then because you had to kind of create a game plan with your wife. And I don't know if she became the breadwinner at that time or not, or how that all played out. But did you feel something in particular as you went off to start your own business?
Oh, yeah, for sure. So, I was the one that was making more of the money before I left my job, but then that quickly changed to where my wife was now making the money for a while. But I don't think we ever looked at it as I have to be the breadwinner or whatever. The way we always looked at it was the money I'm bringing in and the money she's bringing in, that all goes into one pot. And it really doesn't matter who's bringing more in or whatever. I don't have much pride in having to be the one to be the breadwinner or anything like that. And so I think that used to be a stigma. I think that's going away a lot more now. And I didn't really ever have to do too much of the dating scene because I married pretty much straight out of college. But I know the one is you have to kind of buy drinks for the girl on a date or something, or pay for the meal on a date. And that was something I did when I was dating Andrea. But I mean,
so you always paid on the date? This is actually a really good point. This is a good money conversation to be having. Is it the male's responsibility to buy all the dating things as that dating process happens?
I might be more on the curmudgeon side of things, and I don't think that should be the case. Now, this was a while back. I've been married for 8 years now. So I think I ended up paying for most of the dates, but I can't remember for sure. I was happy to do it, and it's not like she expected me to pay for everything either.
So if she said, I got it tonight, don't worry about it, you didn't feel emasculated or anything by letting her pick up the tab?
No, and I think sometimes we go halvesies on things sometimes as well. It wasn't too big of a deal. If I was dating, I think I would have a hard time. Like, I, you know, I work hard for my money. I do want to be able to treat you too, but you make money now too. And maybe you should pay for some of the dates as well. I don't know. Maybe I wouldn't get any dates if I have that viewpoint, but thankfully I don't have to worry about that.
Oh, it's a really good point of, the male being the pursuer and the woman being pursued. And as the world is evolving and hopefully we're ditching some of the stereotypical societal views that exist, we also need to evolve in some of these areas to where there may be a female breadwinner. And should a guy break the bank or go into debt because he feels that it is so important that he pick up the tab, that could be something that could really ruin your finances.
Yeah, it really can. And I do remember having a conversation with one of my friends. He was still trying to go through schooling, and his wife was the breadwinner of the family. And I just remember him telling me that it was a little weird getting used to, but it wasn't too big of a deal to him overall. And he was happy that his wife was the breadwinner, but it was something that he just kind of had to get his mind wrapped around at first. So I think that's still a little bit there. I think that's going away, but I don't know for sure.
Okay. So how are you guys talking about finances together now? Do you guys have like a monthly financial meeting? How does the overall finances of the household get managed?
Yeah, so I'd see this with a lot of couples is they don't really talk about money on a regular basis when they should at least review things together. And for a while, myself and Andrea were kind of the same way, much to the chagrin of Andrea. She asked more of me to share, and I'd want to, but then I wouldn't. And that's a very important thing. And we've started doing that now and being on the same page of where the money is going. and how to prioritize where that next dollar goes is vitally important.
What was the reason that you didn't share when you didn't? She'd ask more, but you didn't.
A lot of that, to be perfectly honest, was probably coming from the shame that the business wasn't doing as well as I thought it should have been for a little while. That might have been the main reason, and just not wanting to upset her or stress her out. That, I think, was really the main reason.
So do you think that, like, kind of as the man, you felt like it was your obligation to kind of pull your weight and you thought you'd be ready by this date and it didn't, and you're kind of pressuring yourself?
Yeah. And really, I wanted to just make her happy and make sure that she wasn't stressing out about things. So if she wanted something, then I wanted to try and make that happen. And for a little while, it was frustrating not being able to do that for her. So it was kind of hard to have those conversations.
Yeah, I can imagine it'd be really tough, especially in our field specifically. One of the biggest misconceptions out there is that because we're financial planners, we don't make financial mistakes,
Oh, yeah.
or that we have it financially all together. Whereas everybody in the world, even somebody who's a millionaire or billionaire at this point, is still looking for ways to optimize their finances. So there can be some things you do right, and you can wake up one day and do something wrong, and it can totally change the trajectory of things. So can you tell us about some sort of financial decisions or mistakes that you made that kind of stand out to you and how you kind of rebounded from them?
Some financial mistakes. No, I'm perfect. Just kidding. So I think I got away from tracking our expenses. So that would be something that I would go back and try and redo, making sure I had a little bit more of a emergency cushion for a while. So those are some big ones. Those are really the ones that probably caused the most stress or led to the most stress down the road for us.
Okay. How did you correct the ship?
Keep working, make sure the business started making money, really. So, using a sports analogy, when you're on a team and the team is winning, you don't have a lot of problems because winning is easy. But when you're losing, it brings out a lot of the tensions between your teammates and everything. And so you can mask a lot of problems by making more money. And not to say that I'm masking as many problems anymore, it's just that having more of the wherewithal has led to being able to get back on track to where I wanted to go.
I like that. I think it's important for us to be thinking about the idea that sometimes it just takes time. And I know I talk to my clients about that all the time, is that you didn't get into debt overnight. You're not going to get out overnight. And we're putting X number of dollars toward this debt, but it's still going to take, a year at this rate before it's gone. And so sometimes it is earn additional funds to relieve the stress of it all, but it's not a magic wand that makes everything go away.
No, no. And really, you just have to think about this as a process and not a one time thing. You're going to be on this planet for a lot longer than just today or tomorrow, most likely. So you just got to view it as a process.
It is definitely a process. All right, now let's talk a little bit about where to get the financial knowledge from. So we talked a little bit about like making mistakes, and the best way to avoid making mistakes is to gather information. What do you think kind of are the barriers that men face as it pertains to maybe reaching out to someone about organizing their finances? And then what tools or resources would you recommend to people to help them better understand their finances?
This is an interesting question because I'm not always on the other side of the table. And my knowledge base comes from reading books from the CFP coursework. So I don't necessarily recommend starting off there, but the internet always has an answer. The problem with that is there's so many answers out there, and it can be hard to sift through what is credible or how it directly applies to yourself. Vanguard, if you're looking to kind of do things on your own and get started on your own, that has some really good resources. But thinking about how much information is really out there, there comes a point where it's hard to make a decision on how does this information apply to me. I think when you get to that point, it can be a good idea to look to an expert. for help on this, a financial planner or a money coach or someone that can help you make decisions that apply to you in a way that takes a look at the whole overarching picture. Because you can have a question on how much insurance should I get? And then how does that fit into your overall picture? You don't want to make that decision in a vacuum.
Yeah. What would you say to a gentleman who's listening right now who feels very ashamed about what he doesn't know about finances? And that's kind of the biggest thing, is feeling like, oh, I should know this stuff. And so I can't reach out to someone, but has his financial future in a holding pattern because of the limited knowledge. How do you get over kind of that prideful, I should know this, this is the man's job to know this sort of thing, and enlist the help of someone else?
Well, first off, just being able to ask for help. I think that's the biggest thing that you could do for yourself. And you have to almost frame it in a sense of, what do I gain by asking for help? What do I lose by asking for help? Maybe it's your sense of pride. And what do I gain by not asking for help, but keeping your sense of pride? What do I lose by not asking for help? And that could be your financial future, whatever that means to you. And which one is stronger? Which one outweighs the two? Hopefully, it's your financial future. Trying to reframe, what are the pros, what are the cons, that can certainly help. And if you come from a place of vulnerability, that can be very hard to do. Asking for help comes from a place of vulnerability, which, as a man, you're not supposed to have any vulnerabilities or show fear, whatever. But showing vulnerability or being able to is a real strength. And so if you look at it that way, it shouldn't have so much of a stigma around that.
I love that. Vulnerability in and of itself is a show of being manly, and being courageous enough to be vulnerable is the thing that could actually, like you said, move you forward as it pertains to organizing your finances and really conquering anything in life.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so often that you said we're taught like, oh, you're the man, you got to be the tough one for everybody. Hold it in, don't cry, don't be sad, don't do this. But being vulnerable, being courageous enough to be vulnerable is a whole new level of taking your manliness to the next level, and how much better you are and how much better you're able to help others and your family and the people around you if you can simply say, hey, I don't know this, but I really want to learn this so that I can continue to move forward.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think there's a risk by going out on the limb. And what if that limb breaks? Well, if that limb breaks, then you learn from that and you only grow stronger from it.
All right, we are approaching what I like to call the final sprint. I'm going to rapid fire some questions at you, and you're going to answer them. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
All right, you've got $20 in your pocket right now. What do you spend it on?
Let's go with bird food right now. We got a bird feeder in the backyard. Come visit us.
I like it.
Yeah.
Bird food's a good one.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, Erik is an avid bird watcher, and I've become a slight bird watcher because of Erik. So
I'm trying to get you to join the team, Lauren.
I'm not joining the bird watching club, but I'm a passive bird watcher. I see a bird and I'm like, oh, I saw a bird. I'm going to tell Erik I saw it.
Yes.
What is your worst money habit?
I would say not being able to say no to certain things.
Ooh, give us an example of something recently you weren't able to say no to.
We had just gone out to eat the night before, probably didn't need to go out to eat breakfast the next morning, but the wife suggested it. So I was like, yeah, that sounds good. Let's do it. Maybe shouldn't have, but food tasted good. So
Okay. I feel like a lot of people's worst money habit is surrounding food. So
yeah, that's an example anyway.
all right, what's your best money habit?
I would say trying to look at things from an overall perspective.
Yeah, I think that's an important skill to have, is to not look at any one thing in a silo, but to look at how does this impact the overall big picture.
Easier said than done. And that actually leads you down a lot of rabbit holes sometimes, but I would say that's a strength of mine.
Mm-hmm. All right, finish this sentence. That awkward financial moment when?
that awkward financial moment when I'm drawing a blank.
You got to tell a client, ...
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that awkward moment when you have to tell a client that you really need to stop spending here and really need to get this thing.
Yeah, those are tough conversations. But as advisors, we are burdened with the responsibility of telling people when there is a more efficient way of doing things. And sometimes it's not a fun conversation, but it's definitely a necessary one. And it ends up being better in the long run.
Yes, yes.
All right. Last but not least, something you do for fun that doesn't cost anything.
Hikes, going on hikes, being out in nature.
Also bird watching, right? I guess you can hike and bird watch.
Yeah. I mean, that goes hand in hand. Usually when I go bird watching, I'm doing some sort of hiking and walking around.
Mm-hmm. I know I just said the last one, but one more last one.
Okay.
What is one thing that you want to improve about your personal finances in the upcoming year?
Have more conversations with my wife around money.
All right. What's the action item that's going to help you achieve that goal?
Are we looking for something like set a calendar reminder for every Friday night or something?
That works for me.
I think each month looking back on past spending and at least looking at where our money went and then just having an honest conversation with my wife around that.
I love it. I love it. I love it. We have made it to the finish line of the final sprint. You are now on the podium because you won the race.
Very good. Thank you.
Get to stand on the podium, and this is your time to shine, Erik. So tell us all about how we can support you, where we can find you, anything we can do to help you continue to win at life.
Sure. So I am looking to always help people make smart choices with their money from a comprehensive overall perspective, mostly focusing on really young professionals that have started making more money and they can start saving a little bit now, and that also are trying to deal with their student loan burdens. I know you work with people with student loans as well. It's something that I have a specialization in and always looking to help people get that burden off their shoulders.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I will include in the show notes all the ways that you can reach Erik if you are interested in better organizing your finances. Erik, thanks so much for being on the show today.
Yeah, thank you, Lauren. Much appreciated.
I hope you enjoyed listening to Erik's Money Memoir. I think we've come a long way in getting rid of some of those old financial stereotypes like men paying for all the dates and handling the budget and the household finances. I loved when Erik talked about us needing to set aside pride and not letting that get in the way of asking for help when you need it. And I think it's a great lesson for both men and women to remember. We've got to be willing to get rid of the gender roles and start thinking about the roles we have as human beings to best organize our finances. Thanks for tuning in today. We hope you found this episode worth listening to. If you have financial questions, suggestions for guests, or would like to share your own money memoir, please don't hesitate to reach out to us at worth-listening.com.